Bryan Krahn joining us once again. Bryan, should guys in their 50s be trying to get abs?
Should they be trying to get abs after 50? Well, it's a great goal. It's an awesome goal. And unless you're genetically kind of predisposed to have like low body fat and visible abs, it takes a lot of work. So, is it a lot harder after 50? Well, it's certainly not any easier. Um, but regardless of the age, I, I think it's a goal that you have to take with caution. Um, I like to see like visible abs as more like a side effect of a really well done, consistent, healthy lifestyle. Uh, if you focus on hitting these basic, healthy metrics that get you in that direction, um, that's a better approach than just being full on focused. Oh, I have to get my abs, have to get my abs, because that can lead you down a pretty dark path of like over restrictive dieting, extreme calorie deficits for an extremely long time, and just kind of like myopic thinking, uh, basically the antithesis of health. So, um, but again, it's also really cool. So, I just think it's a good goal at any age, but the older you get, the more caution you kind of have to have.
I think that's a good way to think of it as like it's the cherry on top, the pot of gold
Yeah,
at the end of the rainbow of the whole journey kind of thing. Whereas when you're solely focusing on it, like you said, we'll talk about some of the cautions that people need to take with this. Um, and I think another aspect of this that I want to mention that we don't really need to talk about is like the focus on that alone leads to some potentially negative like mental health aspects of the whole thing, where you're focused on something that's like so minuscule in the grand scheme of things, and if you just focus on the big rocks, which we'll talk about, you'll get there anyways.
yeah.
um but can you talk about some of the cautions, maybe more in the sense of like the over 50 crowd of solely pursuing abs? You mentioned staying in a deficit for far too long and just like really hardcore dieting. Why is that something that you should be more cautious about when you're older versus when you're in your 20s maybe?
Well, the biggest thing is there's the loss of muscle mass, of your lean muscle. I mean, we throw that, it's almost like we don't take that seriously enough. Because that is, especially as you get older, because that muscle, that's your insurance policy. I mean, that's your life force as you get older. Like that, a few pounds of muscle, that can be the difference between, falling and bruising your hip versus falling and breaking your hip. That can be, the difference between like a few days in the hospital for versus an extended hospital stay. And as anyone who has, friends or family in the medical system, you you want to stay out of the medical system for as long as you possibly can. And one of the best ways you could do that is have a lot of muscle. And it's not even so much the muscle tissue, it's all the things that you have to do in your lifestyle to build muscle. Like they're all these healthy habits that's what kind of bulletproofs you as you get older. Now, when you're younger, yeah, if you're 24 and you really want to see your abs, you can over diet and overstimulate yourself and go on some extremely restrictive diet, and boom, eventually you will get abs and you'll lose a bunch of muscle, you'll feel terrible, and you'll learn those like there's nothing there are mistakes that everyone goes through at once in their bodybuilding kind of journey, and you learn from it and you move on. But when you're older, you don't have the luxury of that time. You can't make these idiot mistakes, because you could wind up really sick, or just never coming back from that.
So there's a difference between being or trying to get abs versus
Yeah,
trying to get lean. I think that overall, like we can pretty safely agree that North America has like an obesity problem. More people are
yeah.
like very overweight. Now, if a guy's coming to you and he's 350 pounds, obviously that guy's pretty far away from getting abs, but like he needs to be he needs to be, sorry for being mean, but it's the truth. He needs to be losing weight just for like literally it's a very extreme health crisis at that point. But
Mhm.
most people are, especially listening to this, are not going to be in that boat. People are going to be
Yeah.
somewhere like, I'm 180 to 210
Mhm.
pounds. I probably feel like I need to lose a little bit of weight, but I think I'm pretty strong, and so I just want to start dieting and get my weight down.
Mhm.
what is your approach to that type of person, which is probably the most typical kind of avatar of person that we'd come into with these kind of questions?
Yeah, that's a good point. And, like the typical person, especially in middle age, that comes to me, um, they typically they underestimate how much body fat they're actually carrying. Um, Even if they're at a quote unquote normal body weight, and they overestimate, even if they lift, frankly, they overestimate how much muscle they're carrying. And so, like, those are, I see that consistently. Um, so, like, the number one thing I try to do is basically is to maintain or ideally increase the muscle while bring down the body fat. And as someone gets older, I put more and more focus on the increasing the muscle. Not saying that losing body fat is less important as you get older. It's just that at a certain point, there's a diminishing return on that. So as long as someone gets to like a reasonable amount of body fat, I just don't want to sacrifice losing muscle because it's so important um, as you get older. So it's kind of like I guess, is it a sliding scale? Um, you get body fat as low as reasonable, and then focus on maintaining or increasing muscle mass. Now, again, if someone is a little bit younger, you can drive that body fat down. You can get into like deeper, so they can see obviously more cosmetic and aesthetic improvements. Getting into like uncomfortable zones, they have that buffer that
Mhm.
being at a younger age affords them. But again, the older someone gets, the more I try to focus on, okay, let's increase the lean muscle mass, increase the strength, because again, it's you got to build it while you can, because it's once you're in your 50s, it's tougher to build it.
Yeah.
And once you're in your 60s, it's even tougher. So you gotta get after it right away.
Even if we keep, having a six pack as kind of our North Star that we're chasing after, when you're older, really at any age, but like if you've got nothing underneath and you're not
Yeah,
that heavy on the scale, you're only 180 pounds, you're only 190. So the scale doesn't scare you, so to speak, but you're
yeah,
37% body fat, maybe even
yeah.
less than that, say like 30% body fat.
Mhm.
You diet that all away, you're going to be like pretty small and you're going to have nothing to show for it. You're just like a bag of bones at that point. And so this is why I
Yeah.
think from a, forget like even the health and stuff that's like extremely important but less tangible, to the most tangible thing with like how do I look, is like if you just diet yourself down and you've got no muscle underneath, you're still not going to be happy with the way that looks.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's a mistake that everyone goes through in their journey. Is again, they overestimate how much muscle they have, they underestimate how much body fat they have, and if they don't do that, for want of a better phrase, the heavy work, heavy lifting to build the muscle, and they diet that fat off, they're never happy. Because yeah, just like you said, you look like kind of like a bag of bones. So um, I think that's why I like to kind of treat abs as like a pleasant side effect
Mhm.
of an overall process done right. A overall process focused more on building tissue, on building strength. Because if you do that, I mean, the bodybuilding world, we call it recomping. Which is basically just means being in and around a slight calorie deficit, so you're slowly losing fat, but you're also even slower building muscle. And the scale weight doesn't change that much, but you're kind of going in each direction, slowly losing, slowly building towards this desired outcome. Um, that's where I really try to pitch my tent, because when you focus exclusively, okay, I got to get abs, I got to diet off this fat to get the abs. Unless you have a significant muscular base, it's not you're not going to be happy with the outlook.
What metrics do you use then to track these things? Because people just step on the scale and you're doing
Yeah,
recomp, you'll
yeah,
see, if you lost 1 pound of fat and gained 1 pound of muscle, I'm not a
hmm
mathematician, but that means that the scale didn't change. It's
yeah.
still at 180. Do you recommend people to get DEXAs, although it's maybe a little bit expensive and not super accessible? Like, how do you help people to we as coaches,
Yep,
we can kind of look in the mirror and figure this out, or
yep,
progress pictures, but how do you help people kind of realize this for themselves?
yeah. I don't recommend DEXAs at all, quite frankly.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I know people throw around their DEXA scans all the time. I just think it's just yet another variable that can get screwed up. And yeah, if it's not consistent, is that, are you using the same DEXA? Like, are you like the actual, are you going to the same lab? Is that lab calibrated? Is it the same technician? Believe me, it makes a difference. And then there's research to show that it doesn't differentiate well, gains in lean body mass versus, it fails to differentiate between, lean body mass and I believe it's fat-free mass, like muscle mass and fat-free mass. And frankly, it's the epitome of an outcome metric that people are focusing on. And I just think that is a mistake. You have to focus much more on these process metrics. And that's like the foods you're eating every day, the steps you're accumulating. Take that along with like a daily scale weight, a weekly waist measurement, and, additional measurements if you have the time. And then on top of that, maybe bi-weekly or monthly progress photos. Like that's the approach that I prefer to take. And frankly, the best metric is how are your clothes fitting? Like that's a very, very good metric of a body composition change rather than putting all your eggs in this quarterly DEXA scan that you get. I mean, I just think you're just setting yourself up to be so deflated. Like I've seen people, and I've worked with people like this, quite frankly, they've lost quite a bit of body fat, by any objective metric. They look better. They feel better. People are commenting. They have to buy new clothes. Then they go and they get their DEXA scan and they're like, oh man, it said I'm 19.2% body fat. I thought I would be like under 10. And now they're depressed. I'm like, yesterday you were so happy. Like, you're getting all these compliments. You feel better. You might not be at your goal yet, but you're well on your way. And now you're in the dumps because of this data point that you got that might not even be all that accurate, So I think that's just a bit of a mistake of getting so focused. It's kind of like if you put all if you base yourself on whether you're winning a contest, against 50 other people, like, okay, like you can really only control yourself, so I just prefer to focus much more on things that your daily process can directly affect.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I bet, something that most people probably didn't realize about those things when we talk about body fat. And there's always these debates online about, should we use the scale? Should we use body fat percentage? How do we measure body fat percentage? And it's like, it's cool for nerds to talk about, but like, it's not necessarily that useful. Like you can look in the mirror and see if you are 20% body fat or 15% body fat. You don't need any type of device or maybe not the number, but you can see you can see directionally which way it's heading. You know what I mean? Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I measured body fat for a living using calipers. I did that for 3 years straight. I pinched so much fat in my time, and that was with the caliper. I think I did 9-site caliper, and then we also did 11-site, and I got pretty good with it towards the end. So I would go through whenever I tested somebody, I'd go through 3 times. And before I went completely freaking crazy doing it, I got pretty good. So at each time, each of those 3, that the average would be very, very similar, like between the 3 measures. But even then, there's so much margin of error that, especially if you're measuring somebody fairly consistently, it almost became useless, and which is why I stopped doing it. So, and again, it becomes noise. All these metrics become noise. So I just like to keep it very low tech, like, get the basics, get a morning scale weight, use the same scale after you use the bathroom every morning, get a weekly waist, and then, focus much more on the process because that's what you control.
As a total side effect on the whole calipers thing, I too used to do the body fat by the calipers and the gym that I was working at, and the guy, and when I realized that it was kind of like, this is real, but also like more of a marketing tool than does it really matter, is because whenever those clients were coming up, like for their time to renew their block of sessions, he would measure their body fat, and all of a sudden that measurement, they would have like this big drop. And it's like, but if you just fudge the numbers on the system, of course, like you measure it at, whatever 5, and you write on the thing, 3.5. Yeah, of course it's going to look better. And then they feel happy. And then, so, you can, that's a negative use of it. That's not someone being honest. But you just reminded me of that story with the whole, like, you got to just like focus on the process, focus on, are you doing the right things? And the results are going to come.
Yeah, and to be honest, like even using a caliper, it like if you're really really good with it, really really consistent, you can use the same technician. Um, if you're just looking at the raw data, like just the millimeters that you're actually pinching, I mean that's more helpful than once you plug it into an equation.
Yeah.
So I guess my bigger point is like the more you can kind of just keep things to very very simplistic metrics that you directly affect. Because once you start plugging things into equations, like we used to use a body fat equation that included the hamstring fold and that didn't. It's just like if I wanted to ruin somebody's day, quite literally, if I wanted to ruin their day, I would say, okay, I'm going to include the hamstring measurement because most people, especially women, that's where they carry a lot of fat. It's just like, okay, well, so the client would, oh, she looks like she's in a great mood. Okay, I'm gonna like maybe I'll try use the hamstring fold because it's gonna inflate the result. And it sounds funny, but it just makes you realize like how so many of these metrics that we're chasing, they're not real.
Yeah.
And if they are, even if they are real, they're so subject to change. Like they're so variable. And the more you can kind of just plant your flag on these things that you control directly, independent of another technician or an equation or like just the food choices that you make, like that's where you should focus on.
Right. The reality, the way that I view most of these tests now is like, how does the outcome of this test change what we're going to do?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then what's the point of using the test? It's just telling me some numbers that are not going to change our process at all. Like you're still going to diet, you're still going to strength train, you're still going to get your steps, your supplements are going to be the same, you're still going to try and get some sleep. Like whether your body fat test of any kind, calipers, DEXA, whatever, says 14% or 17%, like we're going to do the same thing. So let's just skip the test and continue on with the process.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of in the bodybuilding side of things, it's a bit of a running joke. Like guys will, I've been in these discussions, like they'll compete, they'll win their show, and then it's like, I knew we get a DEXA. Look at that, I'm 19%. Ha ha ha. It's like clearly they just won a contest. They're probably sub 6%.
Right.
And it just because the machine wasn't well calibrated, especially for someone. They don't work as well for someone at the extreme ends of body composition.
Right.
Now, but the thing is that when someone has that validation of already won their contest, or they just have the wherewithal to know I'm in great shape, I don't give a shit what this machine says, that's a little bit different. But I feel bad for people who put so much, like all their validation comes from what this machine says, or quite frankly or even competing in a contest, if they don't do as well, they're deflated. It's like, well, just a few days ago, you felt great about your progress. I mean, you look great. You're getting all these compliments. You're buying new clothes. You're all-time best shape. But now because you didn't win something, or the other people just happen to be better, now you're deflated. So
right.
There's a lot of mindset in all this. That
there was a story. I think I'm pretty sure it was Ronnie Coleman. He said he got -2% body fat on a DEXA scan.
I know. Everyone makes fun of him. Yeah, I know. But the thing is, he's probably not lying because he probably he probably got a bad technician on a bad day using an uncalibrated machine. That's just not. They don't see. Ain't a lot of guys like that walking around.
Of course.
So
yeah, of course. It's definitely not made. He's not a normal human in the best way possible.
This is not. So I can see that blowing the machine up a little bit.
Yeah. So all these testing things aside, then how does someone like average person out there, like you and I can look at someone and be like, hey, that person is carrying more body fat than they think they are and less muscle. Yeah. How does someone figure that out for themselves?
That's a good question. Well, waist measurement is especially with men, like waist is important. So if someone is more than like a 36-inch waist, and I know already now people are like, well, where do you measure the waist? I got a buddy pulls his pants up so high, pulls it up. It's like he pulls it up like it's a bra. So I'm like, I bust his chops all the time. Like those are your boobs, man. That's not your waist. But anyway, I typically measure it at the navel. But if someone has more like in a 36-inch waist, they got to lose some body fat. I mean, because that's the visceral body fat typically. Like that's the in terms of chasing health metrics, that's what you want to focus on,
Right.
is reducing that. But quite frankly, if someone's not strength training regularly, I don't care what you do, you probably are under muscled. Like
Yeah.
there's just I run very few people who are naturally carrying a lot of muscle. I
Man,
can make jokes about people who think they do, but
yeah, that's invisible lat syndrome. That's probably
Yeah.
the best answer actually that I've ever heard of that I can think of is like, if you're not lifting, you don't have enough muscle. Like there's no
Yeah.
other way. There's no other way about
Yeah.
this. Like I know plenty of guys 50 plus who are like, yeah, I golf, I play squash at the gym.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like that's all fine and good, but that doesn't, and that's healthy. And it's nice
great,
that you're exercising. It's wonderful, but you still don't have enough muscle. And not having muscle, like physically not having muscle, is the thing that is going to, like, that is another layer of health on top of just generally being active. And unfortunately, the way our world is designed, we're not doing manual labor, and so we're not like resistance training at work, so to speak. And so you have to do that in the gym. You can play golf and squash and do all the other stuff as well, but like you got to also be resistance training.
Yeah, and I would, that's funny you bring that up, because I would used to. When you'll have clients who are like a little bit older and they used to strength train a lot, and then invariably they get busy or they get hurt, and then they switch to like racket sports or cycling or golf, and I would kind of be like, okay, they got a lot of muscle on them still, but even then, if you are not strength training, it's coming off. Like and like, yeah, those racket sports, yeah, it's obviously it's good for you, but it's not hanging on to your muscle. At least not to the degree that you think it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're not strength training regularly and like making it a reasonably focused part of your exercise system, yeah, you are either losing or don't have enough muscle.
What do you think the minimum is for someone to be doing on like a weekly basis?
Well, if someone has a great base, like they've been training for years and then they just fell away from it for whatever reason, if they can get in 2 full body sessions, they can probably hang on to almost all of it, unless they were Ronnie Coleman showman up, they can hang on to almost all of it. But if you're under muscled and you're trying to add some, 3 sessions a week is ideal, I think. And 4 might be better, but you can do the difference between 3 and 4 isn't terribly significant. Like that's where you want to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, in other words, to answer your question, the bare minimum would be like 2 full body, but 3 to 4 would definitely be ideal.
Yeah. And I mean, there's only 7 days in a week, so we don't have a ton of variability in the answer here, but I think it's important because I know that a lot of people, like, you're pressed for time, you've got your job and your family and all other things, and you still want to play golf and squash and whatever stuff you want to do. And so it's like, how many days are you really going to do this? And so I think that what I'm getting at here is like, if people need to know that, like, hey, like 3 or 4 is probably ideal, but if you can at least get 2, you're good. You don't have to be in the gym 5 or 6 days a week. Like that is not a requirement to build muscle.
Yeah. Like I tell my clients, just try to do something every day. And by something, I don't mean a gym workout. Like, just do something that could be obviously a gym workout. It could be going for a walk. It could be playing golf. It could be, quite frankly, it could be planning your meals for the week and going grocery shopping. That's a big something. If you dedicate a day to that, that's your one thing that you do that day, that's a day well spent.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be every day doing a structured workout. And then when you take a look at it, like the course of the month, if you're getting in at least those 2 to 4 strength training sessions a week on average kind of thing, then you're fine.
The guy who hasn't been lifting for a bit, he's been off for a little while, coming back into the gym, but he used to lift, 15 years ago. 2 or 3 lifts a week, full body. How are you structuring those workouts as far as like not necessarily specific exercises, but like types of exercises and maybe like reps and sets? Like where are you, because we're trying to build strength and build muscle. How are you structuring these workouts?
Well, the thing is, I find is the older somebody gets, the more there's a lot of things become much more context dependent. So just like, in other words, if I get somebody like in the example that you present, okay, what I'm hearing is, okay, so in their former days, they did a lot of training. So they're showing up with some machinery and some memories of what it's like to train hard, to train progressive, use big weights, use big exercises. That's all still in their DNA, so to speak. But now I got them, and they're a little bit beat up. They're detrained, and quite frankly, they but probably a lot more than they think. So now I'm like, okay, I got to hold this.
Unfortunately, you don't still got it. That's what's Bryan.
Yeah, you don't still got it, and we probably can't get it back. And no matter how hard you try. So I guess what I'm saying is, if someone shows up with a pass like that, I kind of have to coax it out of them and hold them back. So I might start them with, maybe for the first week or two, we're doing 2 full body workouts a week, and they'll be sending me emails like, this is too easy. I got to do more. What's the point in all this? I used to train 6 days a week, blah, 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 and then get them up to 3, maybe, then switch to like an upper lower split. The point being is, it becomes like a delicate balance between what somebody, used to do and probably can come close to still doing, but what they realistically should be doing right now. So it's difficult to give a pat answer, because people present with so many different contexts. But I always try to give people a little bit less than what I think they can do, so they feel successful and they come back for more. Because the last thing you want to do is sandbag somebody with a bunch of work that they're not used to, or they haven't done in a long time. Get them hurt, or just get them beat up, so they start to dread training, and then you'll lose them forever. Right. So you always want to be building on success.
Yeah, the only thing worse than not training is not being able to train because you got injured while training. Right?
Yeah, that's I think the number one goal for somebody certainly over 50, even over 40, is number one goal has to be, don't get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds, I always kind of hate saying that, because it sounds so wimpy, and it doesn't mean don't train. You can't train hard or progressive. It just means you have to make these little, everything you have to make this little kind of like this, risk cost benefit analysis. I think that's the expression. Yes, you have to start running that math all the time.
Right.
And if you're doing it correctly, it means maybe, you don't always try to add weight, you're always, or you might stop every set with, you could probably do one more. I'll stop now anyway. Just those little concessions, that's what will keep you from getting hurt and getting these kind of injuries they're annoying. Those injuries that are annoying when you're 20 and 30, but will set you out for weeks when you're 40 and 50. You just can't afford that kind of time off when you're older.
Right. The same way that dieting to get a 6-pack is different than dieting to not be fat. Training to build muscle to win a bodybuilding show is different than training to build muscle as a regular person. You don't need to optimize the crap out of every single set you do and take everything to failure and all the time. You need to train hard and push yourself, but you also need to not take unnecessary risks. A guy who's trying to win a strongman competition or a bodybuilding show or something is maybe going to push things past the point of hey, this is a little bit risky. I might tear a pec. But the reward is worth it for me because I'm trying to win Mr. Olympia. If you're just not trying to do that, the reward of pushing through when you feel that pressing motion and you get that little twinge in your shoulder, you're done for that. That's enough. You don't need to push through that. There's no need for that.
Yeah, I tell all my clients, as soon as something even starts to approach hurting, not stop, stop. And, even if you keep doing what they all say to me, or especially the guys, well, then I did a few more sets and it started to feel better. I hear this all the time. It's dude, it might have felt better, but you ain't getting better. So as soon as something starts to hurt, you stop, you try a similar movement. So in other words, if you're doing a dumbbell curl and it's starting to make your elbow bark a bit, okay, let's try a hammer curl, or let's try a cable curl, or there's no shortage of curls. There's no shortage of any exercise variation. And if you try that variation and things feel great, awesome, stick with that. Now, if you try that variation and your elbow still hurts or whatever, okay, then you might want to lay off that movement plane altogether for a few days.
Right.
But just the last thing you want to do is work through pain. The last thing.
Yeah. It's a good point of having thinking about your exercises as movement patterns or muscle groups
Yeah.
that you're working,
Yeah.
not necessarily that you need to be married to any
Yeah.
given exercise. It's just not important.
Yeah. There are no must-do lifts. Like unless you're competing in a sport that's based on those lifts, like, powerlifting. Like if you can't bench press and you're in powerlifting, you're not going
That's
to
a
go
problem.
very far. But any other kind of goal, whether it's just to look good or to be strong or whatever, there are no must-do resistance training exercises. Just do a different variation.
Yeah. Even in bodybuilding, which is like effectively
Yeah,
what we're
no,
talking about, just to a lower degree. Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure many of the pros like do a lot of the same exercises, but there's probably some of them that like, maybe this is too much of an extreme example, but like I just never dumbbell bench press because it just
yeah,
doesn't feel good for me. And it's like that guy still has a great chest. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's not as strictly necessary. So I think it's
yeah.
important for older people especially to know that, like, hey, you can just let go of some stuff. It's okay to not barbell back squat. Although I love barbell back squatting and I'll always
Yeah,
be a proponent of that. It's okay to not do that.
yeah, exactly. Because there are essential movement planes.
Right.
Like a squatting motion, that is essential. If you can't, if there are like very basic movements that you can't do, like if you can't hip hinge, like that's a problem. Doesn't mean you have to deadlift, but you have to train that hinging pattern. And even more so with a squat, like that's an essential movement pattern.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to barbell back squat, especially you got tight shoulders or whatever. No, you could do, my personal favorite, like a dumbbell split squat or you can use a machine or like there's there's no need to be married to like a specific exercise.
This is why I don't remember if we said this on the recording or not. We were talking before, but you mentioned the phrase cautious urgency in the training.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good, summary of what we've been saying, where it's like, hey, you need to, like, this is really important for you to do, but that doesn't mean like, risk it all to build a little bit of muscle.
Yeah. Like I personally think that everybody should strength train, but in your 20s and 30s, you can still see that as, okay, this is an option that I might fit into my life at some time. Once you get over 40, that's, in my opinion, this is no longer an option. You have to be strength training, because you are losing muscle and it at an increasingly faster rate. And you're getting into these years where it's tougher to build muscle. And most importantly, you're going to be at this age where like that's your insurance. Like that's what's going to keep you healthy and vital and strong and out of the freaking nursing home or the ICU. So that's the urgency part. But the cautious is that at the same time, while you have the sense of urgency, you don't want to get hurt. So you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to make dumb mistakes, whether it's like training through pain or doing exercises that you're just not capable of doing, or that just always hurt, or just doing too much. It's a delicate balance, really, because you have to make it a focus and a priority, but you also have to respect it.
Yeah. I mean, if you spend your 20s and 30s and even your 40s building muscle, then in your 50s and beyond, you can just focus on maintaining that and just keeping that. But if you haven't spent your earlier part of your life doing that, well, like time is running out. It's only going to continue to get harder. And and even if it's harder or easier as a separate topic, there's just less time to do that. Like it has to happen now. And so this is where like hey, if you didn't do it before, that's okay. It's never too late, but also like we got to get a move on here.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, especially older folks, especially if they're not they've never been comfortable in the gym, they'll just think, as they get older, like, I just don't want to, I find it inconvenient and I was never good at it. And I don't like this. I don't like that. You have to kind of get over it and say, okay, this is how you protect yourself. This is how you ensure aging gracefully, aging with dignity. Like yeah, we got to stop thinking about your feelings. This is life insurance, really.
Yeah. Most people get into old age homes because they lose like their independence, and independence defined as ability to walk up the stairs, carry your groceries in, cook for yourself, like just handle yourself physically. Right. Yeah. And so if you can build more muscle, you increase your ability to function, you protect yourself against any accidents, falls, etc. And you just increase the amount of time that you will be able to be like functional for day-to-day life. And that's what it's
Well,
really about.
yeah, like if you want to be that guy who lives in or girl or lives independently in their own home in their 80s, you should be strength training regularly, progressively in your 40s and 50s, because like that's how you set yourself up for that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, that's, as you know, not always like the sexiest motivator. And so, like, to kind of bring this full circle and wrap it up, like getting into it for wanting to improve your aesthetics, fit better in your clothes, get a 6-pack, all that stuff. It's all fine and good, but we got to keep that as like, if we do all of the other things right, we spend time building muscle, we spend time building strength and improving your physical function. 6-pack is it's relatively easy to get once you have the foundation built. Is that fair to say?
Well, it's never easy for most of us. Some people, and I hate them. It is easy, but I think a better way is a better way to see it is if you chase those higher goals, if you chase like getting a big, jacked, ripped physique, like kind of a higher end of the aesthetics when you're young. Yeah, then when you kind of tone things down and you get older, it's just a lot easier then because you're not chasing such a high bar. So I'm not sure where I was going with that.
No, it's a good correction on me. I said easy and I shouldn't have said easy. Maybe what I meant was more like once you have the foundation of a muscular physique underneath, it is simpler and maybe faster to diet off the remaining body fat. Whereas building muscle and strength, it just takes longer and it's like more hard work. Dieting is hard. Like, you're starving yourself. It's not fun. But it's like you can lose more weight in 6 weeks than you can gain muscle in 6 weeks, so to speak.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like if, I think a big mistake that people make is they focus too much on, okay, I got to lose this fat. I want to get this fat off. I want to get this 6-pack, or I just want to fit into this dress or fit into this outfit. Like that, focusing more on the building the muscle part, even, for a few months will make achieving that fat loss goal so much easier. So, and as you get older, if do your homework when you're young, it's pretty easy to maintain quite a bit of muscle, as you get older, provided you avoid absolute bed rest or, it's easy to hang on to everything. But, we're all not, some people just wait too long and you have to, at some point, again, it becomes less of an option and more of a requirement.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that is actually like, it's like more urgent when you're older, but it's actually just a requirement to strength train after you graduate high school. Like I think you just have to be doing it in this. If you want to live like a full life, I think you just unfortunately have to be doing it. Now we're both biased because it's what we do, obviously, but I just don't see another way around it. I don't.
Yeah. I'm fortunate in that way. There's one upside to having this obsession that you share as well, is that I can't imagine going, more than a week without lifting. I just can't. I would not. I'm sure I could figure. I don't know if I could. If my sanity would take it. It would just feel it's like personal hygiene. It's just like something that you do when it's But again, not everyone is indoctrinated into it like you and I are. But so then they might have to make that mindset shift, and that it's not about it's something they got to do. Something you have to do, and make time for it.
Agreed. I think people have got too far, through the internet of like, oh, you gotta love the journey and fall in love with the thing and find what it's like. Yeah, like maybe if you're lucky, but also like, does anyone love brushing their teeth? Do you love eating vegetables? Like, no, but you just do it because it's good for you. And strength training is also just one of those things. Most people are not going to love it, and I apologize, but like you got to do it.
Yep. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to say it here, Brian, before we wrap this one up?
No, that's good. You summed it up, man.
Very good.
Cautious urgency.
Cautious urgency. At Bryan Krahn is your handle on everything. BryanKrahn.com. Anywhere else you want to send people?
No, that's it. I'm on Instagram. I think, that's my BryanKrahn.com is my It's my website. Yeah, I'm out there. Come
Very
say
good.
hi.
One of the best. Bryan Krahn, thank you very much. As always, thank you as always for listening. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you're following Bryan, plugged into everything that he's got going on. Share the episode with your friends, especially your over 50 friends. That's it. Go outside. Be a good person. See you next time.